Chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Now hear, O son of Partha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with the mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt." In this 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the nature of Krishna consciousness is fully described. Krishna is full in all opulences, and how he manifests such opulences is described herein. Also, for kinds of fortunate people who become attached to Krishna, and for kinds of unfortunate people who never take to Krishna are described in this chapter. In the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the living entity has been described as a non-material spirit soul capable of elevating himself to self-realization by different types of yogas. At the end of the 6th chapter, it has been clearly stated that the steady concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, is the highest form of all concentration. By concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth completely, but not otherwise. Impersonal Brahmajyote or localized Paramatma realization is not perfect knowledge of the absolute truth because it is partial. Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna, and everything is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness. In complete Krishna consciousness, one knows that Krishna is the ultimate knowledge beyond any doubts. Different types of yoga are only stepping stones on the path of Krishna consciousness. One who takes directly to Krishna consciousness automatically knows about Brahmajyoti and Paramatma in full. By the practice of Krishna consciousness, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living entities, the material nature, and their manifestations with paraphernalia. One should, therefore, begin the practice of yoga as directed in the last verse of the 6th chapter. Concentration of the mind upon Krishna the Supreme is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam is the first and most important. The Lord, therefore, says to Arjuna, "Tak Kanu, or hear from me." No one can be a greater authority than Krishna, and therefore, by hearing from him, one receives the greatest opportunity to become a perfectly Krishna-conscious person. One has, therefore, to learn from Krishna directly or from a pure devotee of Krishna, and not from a non-devotee upstart, puffed up with academic education. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this process of understanding Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, is described in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto as follows: to hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. By the development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lusts and avarice are diminished. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of Asamshayam Samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. Complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of both of them. This is transcendental knowledge. The Lord wants to explain the above-mentioned system of knowledge because Arjuna is Krishna's confidential devotee and friend. In the beginning of the 4th chapter, this explanation was given by the Lord, and it is again confirmed here. Complete knowledge can be achieved only by the devotee of the Lord in disciplic succession, directly from the Lord. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to know the source of all knowledge, who is the cause of all causes and the only object for meditation in all types of practice. When the cause of all causes becomes known, then everything knowable becomes known, and nothing remains unknown. The Vedas say, Kasmin Bhagavo Vijnate Sarvam Idam Vijnatam Bhavati. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. There are various grades of men, and out of many thousands, one may be sufficiently interested in transcendental realization to try to know what is the self, what is the body, And what is the absolute truth? Generally, mankind is simply engaged in the animal propensities, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, and hardly anyone is interested in transcendental knowledge. The first 6 chapters of the Gita are meant for those who are interested in transcendental knowledge, in understanding the self, the superself, and the process of realization by jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, and discrimination of the self from matter. However, Krishna can be known only by persons who are in Krishna consciousness. Other transcendentalists may achieve impersonal Brahmin realization, for this is easier than understanding Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Person, but at the same time, he is beyond the knowledge of Brahmin and Paramatma. The yogis and jnanis are confused in their attempts to understand Krishna. Although the greatest of the impersonalists, Shankaracharya, has admitted in his Gita commentary that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his followers do not accept Krishna as such, for it is very difficult to know Krishna, even though one has transcendental realization of impersonal Brahmin. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, collectively, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. The science of God analyzes the constitutional position of God and his diverse energies. Material nature is called Prakriti, or the energy of the Lord in his different Purusha incarnations, expansions. As described in the Sattva Tantra, for material creation, Lord Krishna's plenary expansion assumes 3 Vishnus. The first one, Mahavishnu, creates the total material energy, known as Mahatattva. The second, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, enters into all the universes to create diversities in each of them. The third, Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, is diffused as the all-pervading Supersoul in all the universes and is known as Paramatma. He is present even within the atoms. Anyone who knows these 3 Vishnus can be liberated from material entanglement. This material world is a temporary manifestation of one of the energies of the Lord. All the activities of the material world are directed by these 3 Vishnu expansions of Lord Krishna. These Purushas are called incarnations. Generally, one who does not know the science of God, Krishna, assumes that this material world is for the enjoyment of the living entities and that the living entities are the Purushas, the causes, controllers, and enjoyers of the material energy. According to Bhagavad Gita, this atheistic conclusion is false. In the verse under discussion, it is stated that Krishna is the original cause of the material manifestation. Srimad Bhagavatam also confirms this. The ingredients of the material manifestation are separated energies of the Lord. Even the Armajyoti, which is the ultimate goal of the impersonalists, is a spiritual energy manifested in the spiritual sky. There are no spiritual diversities in the Brahmajyoti as there are in the Vaikuntha Lokas, and the impersonalist accepts Brahmajyoti as the ultimate eternal goal. The Paramatma manifestation is also a temporary all-pervasive aspect of the Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. The Paramatma manifestation is not eternal in the spiritual world. Therefore, the factual absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. He is the complete energetic person, and he possesses different separated and internal energies. In the material energy, the principal manifestations are 8, as mentioned above. Out of these, the first 5 manifestations, namely earth, water, fire, air, and sky, are called the 5 gigantic creations or the gross creations, within which the 5 sense objects are included. They are the manifestations of physical sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. Material science comprises these 10 items and nothing more. But the other 3 items, namely mind, intelligence, and false ego, are neglected by the materialists. Philosophers who deal with mental activities are also not perfect in knowledge because they do not know the ultimate source, Krishna. The false ego, I am, and it is mine, which constitute the basic principle of material existence, includes 10 sense organs for material activities. Intelligence refers to the total material creation, called the Mahatattva. Therefore, from the 8 separated energies of the Lord are manifest the 24 elements of the material world, which are the subject matter of Sankhya atheistic philosophy. They are originally offshoots from Krishna's energies and are separated from him. But atheistic Sankhya philosophers with a poor fund of knowledge do not know Krishna as the cause of all causes. The subject matter for discussion in the Sankhya philosophy is only the manifestation of the external energy of Krishna, as it is described in the Bhagavad Gita. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another, superior energy of mine, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material, inferior nature. Here it is clearly mentioned that living entities belong to the superior nature, or energy, of the Supreme Lord. The inferior energy is matter manifested in different elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Both forms of material nature, namely gross, earth, etc., and subtle, mind, etc., are products of the inferior energy. The living entities, who are exploiting these inferior energies for different purposes, are the superior energy of the Supreme Lord, and it is due to this energy that the entire material world functions. The cosmic manifestation has no power to act unless it is moved by the superior energy, the living entity. Energies are always controlled by the energetic, and therefore, the living entities are always controlled by the Lord. They have no independent existence. They are never equally powerful, as unintelligent men think. The distinction between the living entities and the Lord is described in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.87.30 as follows: O Supreme Eternal! If the embodied living entities were eternal and all-pervading like you, then they would not be under your control. But if the living entities are accepted as minute energies of your lordship, then they are at once subject to your supreme control. Therefore real liberation entails surrender by the living entities to your control, and that surrender will make them happy. In that constitutional position only can they be controllers. Therefore, men with limited knowledge who advocate the monistic theory that God and the living entities are equal in all respects are actually guided by a faulty and polluted opinion. The Supreme Lord, Krishna, is the only controller, and all living entities are controlled by him. These living entities are his superior energy because the quality of their existence is one and the same with the Supreme, but they are never equal to the Lord in quantity of power. While exploiting the gross and subtle inferior energy, matter, the superior energy, the living entity, forgets his real spiritual mind and intelligence. This forgetfulness is due to the influence of matter upon the living entity. But when the living entity becomes free from the influence of the illusory material energy, he attains the stage called mukti, or liberation. The false ego, under the influence of material illusion, thinks, I am matter, and material acquisitions are mine. His actual position is realized when he is liberated from all material ideas, including the conception of his becoming one in all respects with God. Therefore, one may conclude that the Gita confirms the living entity to be only one of the multi-energies of Krishna, and when this energy is freed from material contamination, it becomes fully Krishna conscious, or liberated. All created beings have their source in these two natures. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. Everything that exists is a product of matter and spirit. Spirit is the basic field of creation, and matter is created by spirit. Spirit is not created at a certain stage of material development. Rather, this material world is manifested only on the basis of spiritual energy. This material body is developed because spirit is present within matter. A child grows gradually to boyhood and then to manhood because that superior energy, the spirit soul, is present. Similarly, the entire cosmic manifestation of the gigantic universe is developed because of the presence of the supersoul, Vishnu. Therefore, spirit and matter, which combine to manifest this gigantic universal form, are originally two energies of the Lord, and consequently the Lord is the original cause of everything. A fragmental part and parcel of the Lord, namely the living entity, may be the cause of a big skyscraper, a big factory, or even a big city, but he cannot be the cause of a big universe. The cause of the big universe is the big soul, or the supersoul. And Krishna, the Supreme, is the cause of both the big and small souls. Therefore, he is the original cause of all causes. This is confirmed in the Katha Upanishad, the 2nd of February, 13 Anityo Nityanam Setanas Setananam. O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me, as pearls are strung on a thread. There is a common controversy over whether the supreme absolute truth is personal or impersonal. As far as Bhagavad Gita is concerned, the absolute truth is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and this is confirmed in every step. In this verse, in particular, it is stressed that the absolute truth is a person. That the personality of Godhead is the supreme absolute truth is also the affirmation of The Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna, who is the primeval Lord, the reservoir of all pleasure, Govinda, and the eternal form of complete bliss and knowledge. These authorities leave no doubt that the Absolute Truth is the Supreme Person. The Svetasvatara Upanishad also presents the Vedic version given in the verse that the Supreme Absolute Truth is the cause of all causes. The impersonalist, however, argues on the strength of the word the Rupam. In the material world, Brahma, the primeval living entity within the universe, is understood to be the supreme amongst the demigods, human beings, and lower animals. But beyond Brahma there is the Transcendence, who has no material form and is free from all material contaminations. Anyone who can know him also becomes transcendental, but those who do not know him suffer the miseries of the material world. The impersonalist puts more stress on the word the Rupam. But this the Rupam is not impersonal. It indicates the transcendental form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge as described in the Brahma Samhita quoted above. Other verses in the Svetasvatara Upanishad 3.8-9 substantiate this as follows. I know that Supreme Personality of Godhead who is transcendental to all material conceptions of darkness. Only he who knows him can transcend the bonds of birth and death. There is no way for liberation other than this knowledge of that Supreme Person. There is no truth superior to that Supreme Person because he is the supermost. He is smaller than the smallest, and he is greater than the greatest. He is situated as a silent tree, and he illumines the transcendental sky, and as a tree spreads its roots, he spreads his extensive energies. From these verses, one concludes that the Supreme Absolute Truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is all-pervading by his multi-energies, both material and spiritual. O son of Kunti, I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound in ether and ability in man. This verse explains how the Lord is all-pervasive by his diverse material and spiritual energies. The Supreme Lord can be preliminarily perceived by his different energies, and in this way, he is realized impersonally. As the demigod in the sun is a person and is perceived by his all-pervading energy, the sunshine, so the Lord, although in his eternal abode, is perceived by his all-pervading diffusive energies. The taste of water is the active principle of water. No one likes to drink seawater because the pure taste of water is mixed with salt. Attraction for water depends on the purity of the taste, and this pure taste is one of the energies of the Lord. The impersonalist perceives the presence of the Lord in water by its taste, and the personalist also glorifies the Lord for his kindly supplying tasty water to quench man's thirst. That is the way of perceiving the Supreme. Practically speaking, there is no conflict between personalism and impersonalism. One who knows God knows that the impersonal conception and personal conception are simultaneously present in everything, and that there is no contradiction. Therefore, Lord Caitanya established his sublime doctrine, Asintya Bheda and Abheda Tattva, simultaneous oneness and difference. The light of the sun and the moon is also originally emanating from the Brahma Jyoti, which is the impersonal effulgence of the Lord. And Pranava, Omkara, the transcendental sound in the beginning of every Vedic hymn, addresses the Supreme Lord. Because the impersonalists are very much afraid of addressing the Supreme Lord Krishna by his innumerable names, they prefer to vibrate the transcendental sound Omkara. But they do not realize that Omkara is the sound representation of Krishna. The jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness extends everywhere, and one who knows Krishna consciousness is blessed. Those who do not know Krishna are in illusion, and so knowledge of Krishna is liberation, and ignorance of him is bondage. Think of a beautiful garden, where the sweet smell of flowers fills the air. That delightful fragrance you smell? That's Kanaya, the source of all original scents. Now, picture a cozy fireplace warming your home. The heat it gives off? That warmth comes from Kanaya, too. He is the heat in fire, providing energy and comfort. As you stroll through the garden, surrounded by vibrant life, from buzzing bees to chirping birds, you feel a vitality in the air. That life force you sense? It's Kanaya, the essence of all living beings. In a quiet corner of the garden, you notice ascetics, deep in meditation, practicing penance. The strength and dedication they show? It's inspired by Kanaya, the guiding force behind their spiritual efforts. Now, shift your focus to a small seed, the beginning of a mighty tree. That seed, the origin of all existence? It's Kanaya, the original seed from which everything grows. As you ponder life's complexities, its ups and downs, Kanaya offers clarity. He is the intelligence in every wise decision, the guiding light in the darkest moments. Picture a strong individual using their power not for personal gain but to protect others. That strength they wield? It's supported by Kanaya, who encourages the responsible use of power. In matters of intimate relationships, Kanaya provides guidance. He suggests that such relationships, when aligned with religious principles, contribute to the betterment of society. Now, imagine the different states of being, goodness, passion, and ignorance, each influenced by Kanaya's energy. Despite being the essence of everything, Kanaya remains independent, beyond the influences of these states. He is the ultimate source, yet not confined by the material nature that exists within him. In this garden of life, Kanaya is the unseen force, the silent guide, the source of all sense, warmth, life, strength, wisdom, and the origin of everything. It's a story of interconnectedness, where every aspect of existence finds its roots in Kanaya's boundless energy. Imagine a grand play where the world is under the spell of three main actors: goodness, passion, and ignorance. In this captivating drama, the entire cast, including humans, animals, and divine beings, is entangled in these modes without realizing that beyond the theatrical set is the supreme director, Kanaya. Each character in this play, influenced by goodness, passion, or ignorance, assumes different roles. Some play the role of wise scholars, Brahmias, while others take on the responsibilities of warriors, Kshatriyas, merchants, Vaisyas, or laborious, Kudras. Yet these roles are temporary, like costumes worn for a brief act. The plot thickens as characters become attached to their roles, identifying as Americans, Indians, Russians, or belonging to various religious groups. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kanaya, the true director behind the scenes, is often forgotten. Even those in the mode of goodness struggle to grasp the personal aspect of the Supreme Lord. Kanaya's beauty, opulence, knowledge, strength, fame, and renunciation bewilder those who are absorbed in the impersonal Brahmin conception. But here's the twist: Kanaya consciousness, a state beyond these three modes, liberates individuals. It's the key to breaking free from the enchanting play and realizing one's divine connection to Kanaya. The drama intensifies as Kanaya reveals his divine energy, comprising the three modes of material nature, which proves challenging to overcome. Although living entities are divine by nature, the influence of material energy shrouds their original power. The Supreme Lord's energy orchestrates the cosmic manifestation, and even though material nature is considered inferior, its divine connection and movements align with the Supreme Will. A metaphorical rope, symbolizing the modes of nature, binds the conditioned soul. Only Kanaya, or his bona fide representative, the spiritual master, can release this bond. Surrendering to Kanaya's lotus feet becomes the sole means of escaping the stringent grasp of material nature. In this cosmic play, Mam Eva, unto Kanaya alone, holds significance. Not Brahma or Siva but Kanaya, the master of Maya, illusion, possesses the power to grant liberation. The Vedic wisdom emphasizes that understanding Kanaya is the key to freedom. Even Lord Siva, a mighty character in this cosmic drama, acknowledges that liberation is bestowed only through the mercy of Vinu, Kanaya. In the grand narrative of existence, surrendering to Kanaya's divine direction is the ultimate act that leads to liberation. Picture a grand stage where different characters play their roles in the cosmic drama. Among them are miscreants, those who, due to various reasons, don't surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kanaya. Some of these miscreants are like hard-working beasts of burden, mohas. They toil day and night for material gains, without understanding the true purpose of their labor. Despite their hard work, they remain ignorant of the Supreme Lord and waste their lives serving temporary masters. Another group, the Naradama, represents the lowest of mankind. Even among the human species, some individuals lack civilized behavior and religious principles. They might be socially and politically developed, but without spiritual understanding, they are considered Naradama. Then there are the Mayapahatajana, individuals with erudite knowledge nullified by material energy. These scholars, scientists, and philosophers might be learned, but their wisdom is misdirected by illusion, causing them to disobey the Supreme Lord. The final category, Asara Bhavam Akrator, comprises open atheists who openly reject the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They might concoct various theories, but their envious nature prevents them from surrendering to Kanaya. The Bhagavad Gita emphasizes that surrendering to Kanaya is the key to liberation from material nature. However, these miscreants, despite their varied backgrounds and intelligence, refuse to accept this simple truth. Their lack of surrender is due to ignorance, delusion, or a stubborn refusal to acknowledge the Supreme Lord. In this cosmic play, the miscreants miss the opportunity to revive their spiritual consciousness. The wise, on the other hand, recognize the need to surrender to the Supreme Lord and follow the path of Bhagavad Gita. Even those considered the lowest of mankind can be delivered through submissive hearing of the message of the personality of Godhead. Unfortunately, many refuse to give heed to these divine messages, perpetuating their state of ignorance and material entanglement. Thus, the cosmic drama unfolds, with some souls awakening to the call of surrender and others persisting in their ignorance and defiance. Imagine a grand theatre where different characters approach the Supreme Lord for devotional service. Among them are four kinds of pious individuals known as Sukhatanau, meaning those who follow the rules and regulations of scriptures, moral and social laws, and are somewhat devoted to the Supreme Lord. The distressed these are individuals facing difficulties or distress in life. In their pain, they turn to the Supreme Lord, seeking solace and support. The desirer of wealth, some approach the Lord because they are in need of material wealth. Their devotion initially stems from a desire for material gain. The inquisitive, Jijasu, there are those who are curious and inquisitive about spiritual matters. They approach the Supreme Lord with a thirst for knowledge and understanding. The seeker of knowledge of the Absolute, Jin, are some individuals, frustrated by their pursuit of knowledge in various fields, turn to the Supreme Lord for a deeper understanding, transcending the impersonal and localized aspects of the divine. These individuals, though not pure devotees initially, come to the Supreme Lord under different conditions. They have some aspirations to fulfill through their devotional service. However, pure devotional service is described as selfless, without desires for material profit or gain. According to the Bhakti Rasamrta Sindhu, pure devotion is defined as rendering transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord favorably, without any material aspirations. When these four kinds of individuals associate with pure devotees and undergo a process of purification, their motives become selfless. The distressed find solace, the desirers of wealth find a higher purpose, the inquisitive find spiritual knowledge, and those seeking knowledge of the absolute truth attain a personal conception of God. It is emphasized that devotional service becomes challenging for miscreants whose lives are selfish, irregular, and lack spiritual goals. However, even some of them, when influenced by the association of pure devotees, can transform into pure devotees. In summary, individuals with varying motives approach the Supreme Lord. As they associate with pure devotees and gradually understand that material desires have no connection with spiritual progress, they transform into pure devotees. This transformation involves transcending material desires, the search for mundane knowledge, and other impurities before reaching the stage of pure devotional service. The grand theatre of life unfolds as these characters evolve on their spiritual journey. In the spiritual theatre of life, there are different characters on the path of devotional service. Among them, those who are in full knowledge and engaged in pure devotional service are considered the best. Such devotees are dear to the Supreme Lord, and the Lord is dear to them. Purification of devotees. Distressed individuals, seekers of wealth, inquisitive minds, and those searching for knowledge can all become pure devotees through association with pure devotees. Pure devotional service is described as selfless, without material desires or aspirations for profit. The ultimate goal is to render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord. The best devotee. The devotee who possesses full knowledge of the absolute truth and is engaged in devotional service is considered the best by the Supreme Lord. Such a devotee is protected from material contamination. The Lord considers this devotee as dear as his own self. Magnanimity of devotees. While all devotees are considered magnanimous souls, those in full knowledge of the Supreme Lord hold a special place in the Lord's heart. Even those who approach the Lord with material desires are accepted, and the Lord reciprocates with affection. Their satisfaction leads to advancement in devotional service. Intimate relationship. The Lord and his devotees share an intimate relationship. The devotees are always in the Lord's heart, and the Lord is always in the hearts of his devotees. Pure devotees in full knowledge are never out of spiritual touch with the Lord and are very dear to him. Rare souls. After many births and deaths, a soul in full knowledge surrenders to the Lord, understanding him to be the cause of all causes. Such a great soul is rare. Spiritual realization involves transcending material attachments and understanding the relationship of everything with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Universal vision. A devotee in full knowledge realizes that everything in the material world has a relationship with the Supreme Lord. This universal vision of the Supreme Lord precipitates the devotee's full surrender to Lord Sri Krishna as the highest goal. In essence, the devotee in full knowledge comprehends the all-pervading nature of the Supreme Lord and surrenders wholeheartedly, understanding that Lord Sri Krishna's mercy is the essence of everything. Such a soul sees Vasudeva, or Sri Krishna, as the prime entity in all aspects of life, leading to complete devotion and surrender. The verses describe two categories of individuals based on their approach to worship: those whose intelligence is influenced by material desires and who surrender to demigods, and those who are freed from material contamination and surrender unto the Supreme Lord, engaging in devotional service. Worship of demigods. Individuals whose intelligence is swayed by material desires seek the fulfillment of immediate material needs by surrendering to demigods. Such worshippers follow specific rules and regulations according to their natures, and they are generally motivated by small desires. They may worship various demigods, thinking them to be better suited for specific purposes. The worshippers of demigods are often in the lower modes of nature, ignorance and passion, and may lack a broader understanding of spiritual goals. Pure devotees. Those who are freed from all material contamination surrender to the Supreme Lord and engage in his devotional service. However, until material contamination is completely washed off, they are, by nature, considered non-devotees. Even those with material desires who approach the Supreme Lord for worship become less attracted to external nature, due to their association with the right goal, devotion to the Supreme Lord. The role of demigods. The Supreme Lord, as the Supersoul in everyone's heart, facilitates the worship of demigods if a person desires material enjoyment sincerely. The Lord allows independence to individuals and fulfills their material desires through the demigods. The giving of facilities for material enjoyment is a result of the Lord's respect for the independence of living entities. However, the ultimate instruction in Bhagavad Gita is to give up all other engagements and fully surrender unto him for true happiness. Subordination to the Supreme Lord. Both the living entities and the demigods are subordinate to the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The living entity cannot worship a demigod by their own desire, nor can a demigod bestow any benediction without the supreme will. The demigods are different parts of the universal body of the Supreme Lord, and they have no independence. The Supreme Lord, as the Supersoul, inspires individuals to worship certain demigods based on their desires and arranges for the fulfillment of those desires through the demigods. The particular mode of devotional attitude toward a specific demigod is also orchestrated by the Supreme Lord. The demigods cannot independently infuse living entities with such affinity. It is the Supreme Lord who impels individuals to worship certain demigods. In summary, the verses emphasize the importance of surrendering to the Supreme Lord, who is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization, even for those with material desires. While worship of demigods may fulfill immediate desires, the ultimate fulfillment and eternal happiness come from surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The verses emphasize that individuals with faith endeavor to worship demigods, seeking to fulfill their desires. However, the benefits obtained from such worship are ultimately bestowed by the Supreme Lord, and the demigods cannot grant blessings without the permission of the Supreme Lord. The worship of demigods is considered less intelligent because these divine personalities are part of the universal body of the Supreme Lord. The devotee, even when in need, prays directly to the Supreme Lord, recognizing that all results achieved by worshipping demigods are perishable. The verse asserts that worshippers of demigods are less intelligent, because they don't understand that the demigods are different parts of the Supreme Lord's universal body. In their ignorance, they consider each demigod a separate god and a competitor of the Supreme Lord. The ultimate destination of worshippers of demigods is different from that of devotees of the Supreme Lord. While demigod worshippers may attain various planetary systems where the demigods reside, the devotee reaches the supreme planet of the personality of Godhead. The verses further criticize the less intelligent perspective of impersonalists who believe the Supreme Lord is formless. The argument is made that the Supreme Lord, demigods, and ordinary living entities are all parts of the universal body of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalists, lacking true car consciousness, cannot understand the personal nature of the Supreme. The worshippers of the demigods, impersonalists, and those who speculate on Vedic literature without genuine car consciousness are considered less intelligent. The verses emphasize that realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes through devotional service and cannot be achieved by mental speculation or studying Vedic literature alone. The commentary underscores that only by the mercy of the Supreme Lord can one understand his characteristics, form, and activities. The verses conclude by rejecting the impersonal contention that the forms of the demigods and the Supreme Lord are imposed, emphasizing that Lord Ka is the Supreme Personality of Godhead with eternal, blissful, and knowledgeable qualities. In these verses, Lord Krishna explains that he is not manifest to everyone, especially to the foolish and unintelligent. He indicates that his presence is covered by his internal potency, and as a result, those lacking intelligence cannot recognize him as the unborn and infallible Supreme Personality of Godhead. During Krishna's presence on earth, only a few people could understand his divine nature, such as the Pandavas and a select few in the assembly of the Kurush. To the common man and non-devotees, Krishna was covered by his internal potency, and they could not perceive his true identity. The concept of Yogamaya is introduced, signifying the internal potency that covers the Supreme Lord from ordinary perception. In the prayers of Kunti, from the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is explained that the Lord is covered by the curtain of Yogamaya, making it difficult for ordinary people to understand him. The prayers of Brahma also highlight that the Supreme Lord's energy and potency are beyond the comprehension of even learned scientists and scholars. Lord Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is described as avyaya, inexhaustible, and he possesses eternal bliss and knowledge. Krishna further asserts that he knows everything that happened in the past, is happening in the present, and will happen in the future. This knowledge is not limited by time, and only liberated beings can have such comprehensive awareness. The verses emphasize the limitations of impersonal realization, and highlight that even if one understands the impersonal Brahman or localized Paramatma, it doesn't necessarily lead to a complete understanding of Lord Krishna as the Supreme Person. Such understanding requires devotion and being in Krishna consciousness. The last set of verses discusses how living entities are born into delusion due to dualities arising from desire and hate. When deluded, individuals become controlled by the illusory energy and cannot comprehend the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The dualities of material existence, such as pleasure and pain, honor and dishonor, and so on, contribute to this delusion. Pure devotees, free from such delusion, can perceive the true nature of the Supreme Lord. Lord Krishna elaborates on the nature of true knowledge and the path of devotion that leads to liberation. He emphasizes that those who have acted piously in previous lives, followed regulative principles, and conquered sinful reactions are eligible for devotional service. Such individuals, free from the dualities of desire and hate, can gradually rise to pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The verse mentions that association with pure devotees is crucial for overcoming delusion. Those who engage in devotional service under the guidance of realized souls can be delivered from ignorance. The devotees, out of compassion, traverse the earth to rescue conditioned souls from their deluded state. Krishna explains that spiritual elevation is possible by understanding one's constitutional position as a servant of the Supreme Lord. Devotees who pass their lives practicing the principles of religion and engage in devotional service can achieve a spiritual body and enjoy eternal association with the Supreme Lord. The chapter also distinguishes between different types of devotees. Those who engage in devotional service with a desire for liberation or for material benefits can achieve their respective goals, but they do not attain the highest perfection of pure devotion. Only those who perform activities in full Krishna consciousness, without misgivings about the Lord, are considered true Brahmin realized persons. Lord Krishna further describes that those who are in full consciousness of him, recognizing him as the governing principle of the material manifestation and the demigods, can understand him even at the time of death. Such individuals, acting in Krishna consciousness, are never deviated from the path of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The chapter concludes by highlighting the importance of association with Krishna-conscious persons in attaining true knowledge and spiritual realization. By associating with devotees and engaging in Krishna consciousness, one can develop firm faith, dridhavrata, and attain the highest perfection in spiritual life.